The Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, famous for its high GDP, fantastic wages, tax breaks, and extremely tolerant policies, the highest minimum wages in Europe, and free public transportation. The small European nation is nestled between Belgium, France, and Germany, with an area of 2,586 square kilometers, or 998 square miles. Luxembourg is one of the smallest sovereign states in Europe. As of 2022, it has a population of 645,397, which makes it one of the least populous countries in Europe, but with the highest population growth rate. Foreigners account for nearly half the population. Alongside Brussels, Frankfurt, and Strasbourg, Luxembourg is one of the 4 capitals of the European Union. But what is Luxembourg really known for? We can sum it up in one word: prosperity. Yes, Luxembourg is one of the richest countries on the planet. Is it just another fiscal haven, or is there more to Luxembourg than meets the eye? Today, we will get to the bottom of Luxembourg's enormous opulence. Before we get started, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll never miss a video. The tiny, landlocked nation of Luxembourg wasn't always known for being wealthy, quite the contrary. If you have a gander at its geographical location, it won't take you long to realize that it's smack dab right in the middle of some of the largest European conflicts in history. The Prussians, French, and Dutch, just to name a few, had a turn influencing Luxembourg and didn't necessarily recognize their sovereignty. Luxembourg has always had lots of natural resources, but didn't always have control over them. Historically, agriculture and iron ore mining have been the main industry. During the almost countless conflicts in Central Europe over the centuries, Luxembourgers suffered severe poverty, with many immigrating to other countries as economic refugees. Alongside being located in between some of the most powerful nations in Europe, had its downsides. It did eventually have many advantages when it came to trade. After centuries of poverty, Luxembourg really turned things around in the 1800s, mainly due to the Industrial Revolution. The mass fabrication of factories, machines, tools, and building by Luxembourg's neighbors put them in a position to start trading and profiting from metallurgy, specifically steel. Because of their location, they could easily trade with France, Belgium, Prussia, and the other Germanic states. Because of this position, tiny Luxembourg eventually rose to one of the highest producers of steel in the world at the time. As far away as New York City, Luxembourgish steel was used to build skyscrapers. Until this day, Luxembourgish company ArcelorMittal is the largest steel company in the world, producing 96.5 tons of steel per year, representing about 5.2% of the world's total steel production. To put this in perspective, the runner-up is China Baowu Group with 67.5 tons per year. While the steel industry helped make Luxembourg wealthy, it wasn't the only reason why the country is insanely wealthy today. In 1929, Luxembourg passed a new piece of legislation. The 1929 law defines a holding company as a company whose statutory object are an acquisition, in any form whatever, and management of participation in other Luxembourg or foreign corporations without exercising a commercial or industrial activity. The holding company is largely exempt from tax, but is subject to considerable restrictions on its activities. The holding company is permitted to acquire, manage, and sell investments in Luxembourg or foreign corporations. The Luxembourg authorities' intention was to eliminate the double taxation of income originating from securities with respect to a lack of double taxation agreements. So, in other words, excellent tax breaks for large, multinational subsidiary companies when they work with the Luxembourgish holding companies. Many of the companies only had to pay around 1% tax. Also, in those days, holding companies were not as common as they are today, so they basically cornered the market and attracted a lot of foreign investment. Over the next 40 years or so, more and more international companies chose to do business with Luxembourgish holding companies, as they had the best fiscal conditions at the time. Around the same time, the banking and finance sector took off in Luxembourg, which made doing business with the companies there all that much more attractive. International business kept coming in, and by the mid-80s, the GDP per capita of Luxembourg skyrocketed past other countries such as the USA. In the next 2 decades, things only got better. With the internet boom in the late 90s, it was easier than ever to do business and invest in Luxembourg. Something else we shouldn't overlook is that the international subsidiaries doing business with the Luxembourgish holding firms still were expected to pay income tax in their home countries. But because of some financially creative incentives, international companies can issue themselves a loan with high interest rates from their Luxembourgish branch. And because this doesn't count as profit on paper, the companies pay little to no tax. As subject as this sounds, it is perfectly legal to do business this way. However, this all changed after the global financial crisis of 2008, and doing business with Luxembourg was never the same. Notably, the US government under the Obama administration declared they will crack down on US companies not paying their fair share of taxes stateside. I want to see our companies remain the most competitive in the world. But the way to make sure that happens is not to reward our companies for moving jobs off our shores or transferring profits to overseas tax havens. That's why today I'm setting a proposal to crack down on illegal overseas tax evasion, close loopholes, and make it more profitable for companies to do business here in the USA, Obama said in a White House announcement in 2009. Following the new proposals to close loopholes by the US government, other countries soon followed, and Luxembourg being such an influential member of the EU, the other members were putting pressure on Luxembourg. Things took a turn for the worst in 2014, when several whistleblower accountants exposed private data from many large multinational corporations doing business in Luxembourg. These so-called LuxLeaks exposed thousands of companies with the details of how they were evading their taxes. As previously mentioned, one of the main legal loopholes was to move profit by loaning the money to your own company. These companies managed to avoid most, but not all of their taxes. Some companies went a step further by hiring large financial consulting firms to assist with reducing taxation. Allegations eventually came out about the then Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Jean-Claude Juncker, agreeing to a special tax deal with these consulting firms. This was seen by many as corruption. Jean-Claude Juncker said in response concerning the LuxLeaks, "It is very difficult to explain why Luxembourg supported a coexistence model and did not want to remove secrecy from its banking system. On the Tax Savings Directive, I knew about that. I headed up ECOFIN committee from 1997, and we were examining the taxation of savings. But at the time, we did not know how many people were saving money in Luxembourg. You are talking about events in the past. I'm afraid that I cannot help you. I never said that I never talked to anyone about tax issues, but I was not involved in any particular arrangements with individual companies. I never discussed fiscal measures with any companies. It is a clear principle in Luxembourg. Tax rulings are negotiated with the tax authorities in Luxembourg, not with ministers." As a result, in 2017, the Luxembourgish government passed new tax policies, making it much more difficult for international companies to avoid taxes in their home countries. Despite all this, Luxembourg's economy has been growing steadily ever since, excluding a small dip during the 2020 COVID epidemic. GDP per capita is 56% higher than the OECD best performers. Overall, the gross domestic product in Luxembourg in 2020 increased from $70.20 billion to $73.35 billion alone. There have been shifts in many sectors of the economy, but a 4.5% increase has been rather unusual. While most countries have suffered significant losses, Luxembourg has certainly held its own. The tourism sector alone slumped by around 21%. The unemployment rate rose from 5.6 to 6.8%. The country's gross debt increased by 16%. The inflation rate has fallen from 1.7% previously to 0.8% by the end of 2020. Perhaps the holding firm business is not what it used to be, but plenty of Luxembourgish companies have plenty of capital to invest in other sectors. Currently, government officials are looking towards making Luxembourg more appealing to small startups, in a sort of Silicon Valley of Europe kind of way, rather than setting up financially creative tax solutions for multinational corporations. Luxembourg has even passed new laws regarding space mining. Whether or not this will ever be used remains to be seen, but it shows how they are looking towards other avenues. What do you think the future has in store for Luxembourg? Will they take their mining and metallurgy expertise to space? Will the economy keep growing, or are they bound to crash? Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more videos just like this.